So this morning we're going to start seated. We'll have a strap bite as well. Going to work on a little bit of balance work today. So this is a dynamic class and we will be moving around and flowing a little bit. We are going to focus perhaps a little bit more on some standing postures, which are dynamic in strength, but we just slow the flow down a little bit. Not a problem. We'll just spend a little bit of time bringing the heels in towards the groin, knees out to the side, and wriggling around on the sitting bone. Combination of shins, hopefully on the floor. Cross legs if you need to, not a problem. You will find that naturally puts your legs up higher. We'll take the strap, put the buckle into one hand and bind the strap around a couple of times so that that buckle isn't going to float about. And then we're going to take the arms up above the head, a comfortable distance to stretch, because all we're going to do is take a breath in and on the exhale, let the arms go back and keep that little bit of tension in the strap and then lift back up again. Now we want to be able to do that and just bring it back above the head, exhaling it back down. A couple of things we want to do: try not to bob the head forwards and backwards. And also, you want to be able to keep the legs relaxed. Now, as you start to get back and it gets a bit tight in the shoulders, you'll find there's a tendency for the knees to lift. So we want to be working at a level where we can still relax the legs and let the shoulders move back. You might ultimately be able to do this with a tighter grip, but if that creates a situation where you're holding your breath and your knees are lifting up away from the ground and you're getting very stressed about it, you're working a bit harder than you need. We're just looking at mobility here into the shoulders, easing our way down. We're getting used to squeezing the shoulder blades together, getting that nice reaction. We'll change the configuration a little bit. We'll take the right arm up towards the sky. We're going to wrap the strap in front of us, bring the arm down and allow that left arm to swoop up and around. So we're just allowing the strap to move around the body. Now it becomes evident why you don't really want a heavy metal block or buckle on the end of the strap floating around your head. Sometimes it would bump into you. Now, we've got the hang of going in one direction, then we'll see if we can take that into the opposite direction. Again, just keeping that little bit of resistance in the strap. Gives us that nice combination of opening up the joint. And then you're going to take the strap and put it into my left hand. Bind that round again, just a couple of times. I'll take the arm up towards the sky this time. And the strap's going to go behind me. I'll bend the elbow and drop the hand in between the shoulder blades, top of the neck. I'll take the other hand out. So the right arm just comes out. And I'll turn the thumb down first, palm facing backwards. Going to ease the arm out, trying to keep that as shoulder level as I can for as long as possible. And I'll take that as far back as I can, so it really starts to open the joint. And then bend the elbow, feed the hand into that strap, and see if I can walk the fingers together. Now, if you're able to get the fingers to touch and you can hook them in to get a little interlace there, you might not need the strap, but for many of us, our hands are going to be further apart than the fingers will be able to reach. So we just hold onto the strap. Now you pull very lightly with the elbow up and very lightly with the elbow down and a little bit backwards as well. And you try and draw the ribs down at the same time. So we're zipping the ribs down towards the hips so that chest doesn't flare too much. And again, we're being careful that the head doesn't get jammed forwards. We won't make enough space for that. Last breath in, release the hands out. And we'll just swap that strap over to the other hand. So again, just a couple of times around the fist so you know the buckle is safely out of the way. Get the strap behind again. Make sure to bend down the elbow, hand in between, close as you can the shoulder blades, and we'll take the left hand out to the side and turn the thumb down, palm back, as far back as you can. When you can go no further, bend into the elbow, find the strap. It's just really a sort of help you navigate the hands together and get as close as you can. Now you'll probably find that your shoulders aren't quite the same on both sides, and that you can get further into the position, one side more than the other. If you find that, that's not a problem. A lot of us have slightly uneven shoulders or some restriction. Could be from injuries in the past, could just be from environmental loading, postural habits, things like that, creating a bit of tension. Again, that mild pull down, pull up, and pull back. And relaxing the legs, we're almost there. Just a couple more breaths. And then we can release. And we'll keep the strap relatively close to the side and the front of the mat, so we know where it is. And we'll lift up onto all fours. Then move my block out to the side and the front, so I know where it is as well. And we're going to come into cat-cow. We're going to make an effort to bring the hands underneath the shoulders and the knees underneath the hips. Have the shins parallel, boot laces down. We'll just draw the chest forwards as we inhale. Exhale, tilt the pelvis the opposite way. Round the spine up, let the head hang. Nice and gently, first couple of rounds. Then you might be able to move a little deeper in, if that feels good in your body to do so. But remember, it's about feeling what feels good for you. It's not an instruction, an absolute you must do. With anything in yoga, it's about testing whether the request is achievable and whether it's safe and sensible for you to do. Might just be that you don't have enough energy for the day to do something during the class, and that's okay to skip it out and give it a miss. We're coming through for the last time and bring ourselves back into neutral. We're going to move into a melting heart pose, but we're going to take the hands a little wider than the shoulders and leaving the hips where they are, sliding the hands forward. We're going to see if we can come into this a little bit more from flexibility and mobility. So I'm going to really let the chest sink down. Now, if you're a bit tight in the shoulders and the upper back, you might find that just getting into a straight line between the hands, the shoulders and the hips is enough of an achievement, especially if you're not used to this position. It's still a bit intimidating. If you're feeling able to relax in, you might be able to let your hips stay where they are, but let your chest and your ribs sink to the floor. I would avoid turning the head to either side. Try and keep the chin or the forehead to the ground. The neck stays aligned. And then to come out of this, we're simply going to walk the hands back and press the tailbone towards the end of the mat. So we come into child's pose. And we can let the head come down to the floor. Pull the hands back in. And we'll come up to a seated posture. And we'll take the arms up. We're going to come into something called a swan flow, which is strong on the spine. If your back is particularly sticky, you might want to take a couple of rounds with the hands in towards the heart, leaning forwards and then stretching the hands out. What we're going to do is keep the belly drawn in, hinge at the hips, keep the hands above the head or in front of the chest, and hinge your way down to the ground. Just control on an exhale, let the hands separate, take a breath in, and then round the spine as you exhale to come back up. Set the hands up again. Inhale. Index fingers up towards the sky. Arms are wrapped around the ears. And you exhale down. Nice and slowly. Take a breath at the bottom. Round the spine back up again. We'll lift up. Lengthen out. Breath at the bottom. So those ribs expand. Connecting to the core muscles as you exhale to lift up. We'll come into the last round, coming down to the floor. On this occasion, we'll stay on the ground. Separate the hands about shoulder distance apart. Lift up onto all fours or untuck toes and move gently back into down dog. So the knees come away from the ground. We lift up slowly and backwards into that down dog shape. And depending on how you feel today, you might want to move around and wriggle a little bit in the down dog shape. Or you might want to be completely still. Your choice. See how your joints feel today and the muscles feel. And then let ourselves move the hands towards the toes so we can come into that famous forward bend at the back of the mat. And enough of a bend in the knees for the hands to stay on the floor and the ribs on the side. Head hanging low. We'll take a couple of breaths. And then bring the hands onto the skin to lift up halfway. Taking the breath as chest lifts forward. Allow yourself to exhale down, just hinging at the hips. Bring the hands to the floor. Bring the hands onto the shins again, lifting up. Ease our way down. Hands onto the shins, lifting up. And exhaling down. We're going to bring the hands onto the hips. Soft knees and a flat back to lift up. And we'll take the arms out wide. Inhale the hands above. And through the heart. Exhaling. We'll do that 2 more times. Inhaling up. And then exhaling down. And last time. Then we're going to shake it out and walk into the front of the mat. I'm going to take the hands in towards the heart. Hopefully that block is still near the front of the mat. Allow myself to exhale down. So soft knees, easing my way down. I'm going to take the flat block on edge, a landscape, and then allow myself to press the hands onto the top of that block about shoulder distance out in front of me, and allow myself to open out the back of the legs a little bit more. So I want to press the feet down as evenly into the ground as I can. And I keep the belly drawn in So I'm lifting the hips up, just pressing the feet to the ground. So I'm moving in two directions through the legs at the same time. I also want to lengthen the chest out, relax the shoulders away from the ears if they were hunched, and keep the head aligned with the rest of the body. Now I'm going to take a breath in, going to lower the block on to the floor so it's flat, and press the palms of the hands in, and see if I can still keep the legs relatively straight, the hands touching the block, and lifting the hips up. Lift up onto the fingertips, leaving the block where it is. We'll bring the hands onto the hips, soften the knees a little, and let ourselves lift up. We're going to zigzag the feet together. So the big toes touch, a bit of an ankle gap. Bring the hands in towards the heart. We're going to move into chair pose. So we want to squeeze the thighs together, sinking down, keeping the spine long. And we're going to take that into a revolved version, but we're going to keep it a sort of fairly easy version. So I'm going to take the right hand to the outside of the left thigh. Take the left hand forwards initially, and then just open that out to the side, rotating the body around, letting my eyes follow fingers, hopefully down the center line of the mat. Now, trying to keep the hips and the knees pointing forward. And then I'm going to bring that arm back towards the front of the mat. Ease the arms down for the crossover. I'll take the right hand out in front. And then watching that hand, I'll take it around to the other side. Trying to squeeze the shoulder blades together a little bit behind me. So opening up the front of the chest, and aiding that rotation through the spine. Now we'll bring that hand back. Bring the hands both onto the sides so the forearms are crossed. Then let the palms come together so the thumbs are pointing towards me. I'm going to start to take the hands up and out as I open the legs up. I'm going to draw the arms past the ears, lift the chest up, rest the feet into the floor, and the eyes gaze towards the hands. So start to come into the beginnings of the back bend. And then I'm going to let myself ease back into a neutral position. Take the hands out wide and back down by the side of the body. So all very nice and slow. Bring the hands in towards the heart. Take a little bend into the knees again, so I'm back into chair. This time, I'm going to take the weight into the right foot. Slide the left foot back into the lunge. Turn the heel in and open into my warrior two. I'm going to adjust and allow myself to get a little deeper by taking the back foot a little further away. Toward the chest crown. Gaze up through that front hand. Take the knee, feels like it's over the ankle. Take a breath. Now I'm going to straighten the front leg, use the hips towards the back of the mat, and gracefully lengthen out into triangle pose. But as the hand comes down, I want that to be on the inside of the shin, so the back of the hand presses against the leg a little bit to help with rotation. I'm going to take the eyes deliberately up towards the top hand, pressing both feet firmly down into the ground. Now I'm going to soften the front knee and back into my warrior two. Take the hands high, rotate out towards the front of the mat, bring the hands onto the inside of this front leg. Walk the fingers around to the long side of the mat, turning the toes in. Take a breath, and then on the exhale, just fold in from the hip, pressing the feet into the floor, feeding the hands gently into the line between the two feet, pressing the hips high, squeezing the elbows together just a little bit, keep the back of the shoulders free and away from the ears. Take one more breath. Use the exhale to walk the hands forward so they're directly underneath your chest and shoulders. Then turn the toes out, heels in again, heels in, so I can allow my bottom to come down into a squat. So I'm just trying to get my bottom to about the same height from the floor as my knees are from the ground, and then bring my hands onto the thighs. Draw the tailbone down as lift the body up. I can put a little bit of weight into the hands, but not too much. And across the forearms together, and then open the arms out to the side. It's a little goddess flow. The legs straighten up. The hands come above the head, crossing at the forearms. And I try to sink my way down an imaginary wall. Forearms cross again. I lift up. Inhaling slowly. Now, if you want to keep yourself occupied, you can see if you can cross the arms over the opposite way each time you come through. But if this is enough of a challenge, then just getting through that will be perfectly okay. We'll come through one more time. And at the top, we're going to turn both feet towards the front of the mat. Allow ourselves to extend out. And then down to the floor. We'll step back into down dog. Allow ourselves to come forward. We'll take a half plank, bootlaces cane, up dog, and then slowly back into down dog. Walk the hands towards the toes. Forward bend becomes Tadasana as we lift from the ground back up. We'll walk it out to the front of the mat again. Feet are parallel and then zigzag them together. Hands in towards the heart. Soften the knees as if you're doing chair pose, so squeezing the thighs together a little. The weight goes to the left this time. Right leg goes back into warrior two. You drop the heel in and open up. Now make any adjustments to come down deeper or shorter, or bring the feet back into alignment so they're more heel to heel, whatever it is that you need to do to feel good. And then we'll slowly straighten the front leg. Then the hips back a little bit as we lengthen out. And coming into that triangle pose, very slow and long. Hand comes down. Top hand goes up. We'll look towards the fingers. And we're using the back of the hand on the inside of that shin as we had before, close down by the ankle, to help rotate the body around a little bit. Now, ideally, that top hand would be at 12 o'clock. But if I do that in my room here on this side, my eyes get blinded by looking straightly into a light bulb. So I need to look at my fingertips. I'm a little bit off of where I said we were aiming for. but there is a rhyme and a reason for everything. We'll take a last breath, soften the front knee. We'll come back into our warrior two. Use the hands high, out towards the front of the mat, onto the inside of that front leg. Walk the fingers round again. Turn the toes in, nice and wide. Again, we fold just gently from the hips, come down nice and slow. Walk the hands underneath the body. Press them into the floor a little bit. That helps give a little bit of extra lift. So not all through the legs, can come through the arms a little bit as well. And we'll lift our way back up. So bringing the hands out in front, underneath the chest and the shoulders. We'll turn the heels in, toes in, heels in again. Just if you need to, any last little bits of wriggles. And we're going to get those bottoms down as low as we can. Bring hands onto the sides. Ease our way back up. So as we're tilting the pelvis, tailbone down to the floor. Bring arms across again, just that forearm cross. And then that slow lift as we come back up. Hands cross over at the top. Exhale way down. Try to keep the spine long and flat. So the tailbone is always pointing down to the floor rather than tilting. So for some of us, moving downwards, that pelvis would tilt forwards from the top part of the pelvis. So basically your pubic bone would go backwards. So you want to draw it forwards a little bit. And you're going to do that by engaging your core muscles. Come down for the last time. And then we're going to lift. And we're going to turn the toes towards the front of the mat. So we spin around gently on the heels. Put the hands out in front. Fold all the way down to the floor. And step it back into our down dog. We'll come forwards into the plank. Half plank and up dog. Roll it back into our down dog. Allow ourselves to take the hands to the toes, back of the mat. And then slowly lifting into Tadasana. Keeping the knees soft and the back lovely and flat. Then we'll walk in towards the front of the mat. The reason for that is that we need the strap for our lift it. So we'll pick that up, unravel that. I'm going to come back to about the middle of the mat. So into standing balances, depending on your mat, you might want to actually move off that onto a hard floor or a flatter, more stable surface. Wooden floors are great, but they can be quite slippy, especially if you polish them at all. So be careful what you choose. You're going to take the strap, hopefully it's long enough to with the feet together on the center line. Just lifting your right foot and bringing the strap underneath the sole of the foot. So you want to be able to thread that strap between the little toe and the big toe. So it goes across slightly diagonally for most of us. Going to take the straps in both hands. Load the weight into the left leg. The strap is underneath the right foot. You've got to lift the right knee. Walk the strap through my fingers and then walk my fingers down towards my foot as close as I can. My arms are straight. And from there, I'm going to take a breath and see if I can slowly extend the leg out 90 degrees to the body. So just using a little bit of resistance through the hands, draw the shoulders back, press out through the heel. And then we're going to slide that foot back down to the floor. Just let the strap run through the fingers. Bring the feet together again. Take the strap underneath the left foot this time. Breathing. Big toe, little toe. It's the strongest part of the foot for us to really be able to press into. So it's giving us the best benefit in terms of providing some resistance, pushing both ways. Take the weight into the right leg. Start to lift the left. Walk the fingers through gently. Get the hands as close as you can towards the foot. So lifting it up past maybe the position of the hip. And then when you're ready, you're going to extend the leg out carefully. Let the strap slide through the hands. Try not to lean back too much. Losing it today. And then we'll let that foot come back down as well. We'll move back to the first side. So just taking the legs out a little bit. So feet together. We'll take the strap underneath the sole of the foot. Take a little time to prepare. It's not really worth trying to rush that bit. Believe me. We'll take a little breath, load into the left. Let the right leg come up. We'll walk the fingers through just as we did before. So the starting point and it is exactly the same. We'll lengthen the legs out in front. Only this time, we're going to take the strap, bind that to the right fist. Left arm comes out to the side. We're going to slowly take the leg out sideways to the right. Over several breaths. Trying to keep the hips, chest, knee, standing foot aligned to each other. And then we'll bring the foot back. And release the strap so the foot comes down to the floor. And we'll just take the legs out a little bit. Give those toes a bit of relief and hands. And then we'll bring the feet together, working into our last side. So strap underneath the left foot this time. When you're ready, taking the balance into the right. Allowing yourself to lift the leg as high as you comfortably can. Take the breath, extend out. Get the strap into the left hand, bind. Right arm out to the side. And then we'll slowly lengthen the leg out to the side. We'll bring the legs slowly back. And ease the foot down to the floor. Make case I'm stepping back onto the mat. And allowing myself to just take out the legs a little bit. We'll come into the front of the mat. We'll take a vinyasa. So put the hands high on the breath in. Put the hands through the heart. Exhale down to the floor. We'll step back to down dog. Come forwards into the plank. You're going to take half plank and up dog. And roll it back gently. To down dog. Now I'm going to take from here the right foot through to the front of the mat and drop the back heel to the ground. I'm going to allow myself to just bring that flat block landscape to the ground, so it's a little bit higher, and allow myself to lift out. So I've got the rear foot sort of 45 degrees. I'm trying to bring the tailbone over the center line of the mat, chest forward, trying to straighten the front leg. So this is something between triangle pose, warrior 2 and pyramid. Not quite following the sort of traditional alignment. But hopefully your pubic bone and your chest are more or less running down the center line of the mat. Front foot slightly out to the side. Rear foot sort of 45 degrees, so the hip is open. We'll soften the front knee. Move the block out of the way so we can bring the hands to the floor. Step back into our down dog. And then we'll bring the left foot through. Drop the back heel in, 45 degrees-ish. Bring the block to the inside, lift it up onto the landscape. Straighten the front leg. And then align pubic bone, heart, over the center line of the mat. Foot slightly off to the side, so that's offset. Back foot again, 45 degrees-ish. Trying to draw the chest forward. We're actually pressing the sort of hips slightly towards the right, when the body really wants to be pushing it to the left. So that's where we're working through the SI joint, the hips, pelvis, lower back. Take a last breath there. Start from the front knee. I'm going to move the block forwards temporarily and step into the front of the mat. I want the feet to be about the same distance apart as that block, because I'm going to bring it behind my heels. Fingertips on the floor just to steady myself as I bring the heels onto the corner edges and drop myself down into a squat. Now I am going to bring the hands together and drive back of the arms into the legs and the legs into the arms a little bit, and from the chest up. I'm going to spend about a minute here, and then we'll take it into some twists. Use the hands down to the floor. I'm going to walk my left hand out to the side a little bit, with the back of the arm pressing into the leg and the palm flat to the floor. I can then draw the right hand out into the twist. I'm actually just following the line of the chest and the hand to the ground. So I'm trying to get that straight line from one hand to the other through the chest. I'm rotating the body around to achieve that rather than pulling on the shoulders. And I bring the hands down. Take the opposite hand out, so right arm. You can see a little bit more easily now that that arm is in front of the leg. I'll rotate round and just really trying to use my sense of perception of where the right hand is on the floor and the alignment that I need to gain to get that straight line between hands and chest. So keeping the shoulder relatively relaxed back here, rotating around the spine. And then bringing myself back in. Going to just put hands forwards, let the hips lift up, step back, down dog, and move the block out to the side. Going to come down onto the knees, elbows, lengthen the legs back, drop the hips down to the floor. Going to take low cobra, so I'm going to ease the hips down first of all, untuck the toes, the feet are about shoulder distance apart, and ease the hands eventually down to the bottom of the ribs. The elbows can draw together and the shoulders back a little bit. On the inhale, I'm just going to lift, keeping the bottom rib connected, exhaling down. So actually restricting myself from lifting as high as I could, so I can lengthen the legs out, roll the heels out, and therefore the thighs inwards a little bit. And at the top of the lift, begin to squeeze the shoulder blades and the elbows together. And it's quite tricky to roll the thighs out, squeeze the elbows in. They want to sort of pair up and follow each other. So you need to keep your eye on that a little bit. And we'll lift up for a final time. Now, as you come down into the floor, I'm going to put the hands down by the side of the body for locust pose. We'll lift the chest and hands to start with. And squeeze the thighs a little. Exhale down. Inhale up. Back down. We'll take two more. Last one. And then this time we'll take the legs, thighs particularly lift, and then the chest, then the hands. Bring it back down together. Take the breath, lift the thighs, feet from the floor, chest, and bring it back down. Take the breath, exhale, thighs lift, chest lift, hands lift, back down. Take a breath, thighs lift, chest lift, hands lift, back down. And take the hands wide like a press up, come up onto the fingertips, a gecko. So the breath is the opposite way around. We draw the belly in very strong and exhale, press into the fingers a little bit to help lift the chest up and forwards. The ribs generally coming off the ground this time, exhaling back down. Some people get higher than others, no problem. You want to still feel comfortable and free and have some sense of space in the lower back. And if it feels like you've been run over by a truck, that would be a bad feeling, and you might be a little bit more enthusiastic than you need to be. Taking that last exhale up. Coming back down. And then once we do, we're just going to bend the left leg, take the hands back, find the toes. So the hand is on the bootlace side of the foot and the heel is in towards the buttock. Then we'll do the same with the right. You could obviously do that the opposite way around. And try to keep the knees more or less hip distance apart. Heels drawn towards the sitting bones, elbows high, and we're actually going to press the thighs and the hips lightly into the floor. Now we're going to add to that. See if we can lift the chest just a little from the ground. And we're still pressing the thighs down. The hips into the floor, almost like we're pressing the knees towards the back end of the mat. Last breath. And we'll ease our way down. Release the legs to the ground, hands more or less to the ribs. Going to peel away from the ground very gently and ease the knees forwards. We'll take them wide onto the heels. Take a moment to breathe. And then as we come down, we're going to let the hands deliberately come underneath the forehead. So we're just that little bit higher. Moving from a back bend, we want to be careful how we move into forward bends. Especially after this, we're going to move into a flowing camel movement. So we'll just take a couple more breaths here. And then we'll use the hands to press down into the ground to lift back up. You might need to draw the knees a little closer together. We're sitting on the heels. I'm going to take the hands back. Let the chest open. So I'm going to keep the chin more towards the chest rather than letting the head hang. We'll bring the right arm across the body. And I'm going to float it out to the side. And we'll let the head follow the fingertips all the way over to the other side. Watch the hand come to the floor. And then turn the head and cross the opposite way, lifting the chest up. Letting the arm float over. Closer to the belly than I thought I was. Go across the other side. Away. Last time with the left hand coming across. Lift up. Then hands forward. Now move again towards down dog. And bring the feet towards the center line at the back of the mat. We come into pigeon pose, so I'm going to draw the left knee in towards my body. And then take the left knee to the outside of the elbow as it comes forward. Drop the heel to the center line. And then the shin comes to the ground as I let the knee travel down the back of the forearm. I'm walking the right foot further back to let the hips sink to the ground. And I'm going to lift up onto the fingertips and trying to square the hips towards the front of the mat. So at this point, the left hip is forward, the right hip is back. So I'm just going to adjust that a little bit. And I'm going to try and press the tailbone down to the floor. So I'm starting to take the weight out of the hands a little. Now you can bring the hands in towards your heart if you've got enough space and height. If you're not too sure how that's going to feel or whether you feel confident, you can do it one-handed at a time. That gives you some idea of then experiencing the pressure through the legs when they're doing all the work. You're actually pressing the back leg into the ground, tailbone down, and I'm pressing the shin and the thigh of the front leg into the floor as well to help with the lift, using the tummy muscles to lift up and squaring the hips. So there's a lot of things going on. So I'm just trying to keep the shoulders fairly relaxed. And then let's simply come back the down dog. So I'll tuck the toes under, lift the hips and the knee, step it back, bring the feet onto the center line again, stretch it out, and then bring the right knee in. I'll come forward slowly, take the knee to the outside of the elbow, bring the heel over, let the foot come down, slide the chin towards the ground, walk the left foot back, down the center line as much as I can, using the hips down towards the floor, and put the toes, square the hips a little bit, press the tailbone down, lift up onto the fingertips. This time I'm just going to slide out onto that right hip so I can draw the legs forwards, just crossing slightly. And I'm going to take the flat block underneath, allow myself to sit up tall. Legs out in front down the center line to begin with, sitting up tall, and then bring the left heel to the outside of that right hip. I'll bring the right foot across, make sure both sitting bones are on the ground, tilt the pelvis forwards a little bit, and go to take the left arm up and cross over towards the right side. So just counterlevering the arm and the leg, drawing the belly in a little bit. Shoulders relaxed and open. Come back. Angle. Over to the opposite side. Lifting up. Rotating round. And then take both legs back out again, just momentarily, give them a little shake. And then I'm going to feed the heels in towards the groin. So I'm trying to get heel to heel alignment, fins on the ground. Again, you can cross the ankles if you need, just to give you a higher position, and restrict how far forward you can come forward. You're going to have the fingertips on the floor, lift the spine up, hinge at the hip, and allow yourself to fold forward. I'm going to take the hands out about shoulder distance apart. Come onto the fingertips, so I can press into the floor a little bit. I'm actually trying to press the tailbone towards the back of the mat, just a fraction. The effort in pressing back engages tummy muscles, draws them in slightly. And take one more breath here. And then use the hands to walk back out. Now we're going to take the front leg and move that out to the side and call that leg number one. And we'll take the opposite leg out and call that number two. And we'll bring number one back in and then follow that with number two. The legs are crossed over. opposite way. Not perhaps the dominant way that you're used to crossing your legs, and it might feel a little bit weird in the hips. So take it carefully as you move forwards. Make sure your hips, your knees, your ankles, and the back all feel okay. If there's any sharp pains, as ever in yoga, that's a bit of a red light, and you move away and back. And that opposed to your knees. You might come down and find that actually, although this isn't feeling as natural as it does on the other side, you might get lower, but you might be higher. Maybe you'll get to the same place. Maybe you'll discover something else in the body as you move into the shape. Remember, we're still pressing into the fingertips a little bit, drawing the tailbone towards the back of the mat. And then let ourselves lift up again, walking the fingers in. Time to come down for a final positive Shavasana. You can use the block behind as a bit of a cushion, or you could even use a cushion if you had one. Knees high, hands behind. Roll spine gently down to the floor with control. Make sure that if you're using a block, it's not pressing into the back of the neck. And then take the feet out to the corner edges of the mat gently. Let's let the legs roll out. Unless your spine is and your muscles of your back are feeling like they've worked very, very hard and they're a bit sore, in which case you want to bring your feet closer towards you and let the knees drift into the center. So making little CTs with the legs and bringing the pelvis into an even more neutral position. And try and relax the jaw, eyes are closed, and let the tongue drift away from the roof of the mouth. Arms face up, just out to the side. I think onto the mat. Focusing on my breath. And we'll give fingers and toes a little wriggle. Begin to breathe a little deeper. Let the wrists and the ankles begin to move. Take a longer breath and then stretch in anywhere that feels good to you. And if you haven't already, just slide the heels along the ground a leg at a time. Towards us. And we'll feed a knee towards the body, again, one leg at a time, keeping these movements very soft and easy, not introducing tension into the body, but just movement. The hands around the shins, will let ourselves rock gently from side to side, building a little momentum, and then gradually taking the legs over towards your right side. Letting the legs fall to the ground. Let your chest follow, turning to the chest, the side of the mat, to press the hands into the floor and lift up. We're all ready to come back into seated postures and bring the hands in towards our heart. We'll take a breath in, close the eyes, and begin to bow the head. Feeling the belly drawing to the spine, we'll sink into that bow and seal our practice for the morning. On the inhale, we'll build the spine, let the head lift, eyes open. Namaste. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. I hope you enjoyed slow dynamic stretch, and see you again on the mat soon.